Hello and welcome to Spokane County Spotlight. I'm Commissioner Amber Waldref, and my guests today are Tori Peterson, Spokane County Juvenile Court Director, and Sheriff John Knowles. Tori and John, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for having us.
I'm really interested to start our conversation about the upcoming vote on this year's ballot. It's a ballot measure for the juvenile detention facilities and jails sales tax renewal. But before we get there, I want to give you each a chance to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about your background and this topic.
Okay, well, Tori Peterson, Juvenile Court Director, and I've been at Juvenile Court for 33 years in a variety of positions. And before that, I spent 2 years in group care here in Spokane, born and raised Spokane, so familiar with the systems and the community.
You're very familiar with the system.
Yes.
Thank you so much for all your work and appreciate you being here.
Absolutely.
Well, and for me, I've been the sheriff here in Spokane County for going on 2 years now. Prior to being elected as a sheriff, I spent 25 years with the Spokane County Sheriff's Office working in a bunch of different areas, from patrol to narcotics enforcement to traffic enforcement, and then probably the last half of my career in the investigative division and various leadership roles.
Well, I'm so glad to have both of you here to talk about this really important measure. And we're going to get right into it, okay. But I want to make sure I start that some folks may be confused because last year in 2023, Spokane County had a Measure 1, and this year's measure is completely different. Every year, if the county decides to put a measure on the ballot, the first one on the ballot is called Measure 1. So I just wanted to make that clear to our viewers that this Measure 1 is different than last year. This Measure 1 is a renewal of a 1/10 of a cent sales tax that we are all paying right now. When we buy something at the store, we're paying this sales tax. It's been around since 1995. Mm-hmm. And as I understand it, it was passed by the voters in 1995 and then renewed 4 times. So this would be on the ballot this fall, the 5th renewal. So, and the last one was in 2015, 10 years ago. So just wanted to give that background. To comply with state law, we have a responsibility at the county to provide jails and a juvenile detention facility. And so this measure is really about maintaining our current juvenile justice facility and jails and staffing those safely and providing services to those who are in those facilities. So Tori, let's start with you. Talk about, a lot of people don't know about our juvenile jail and our justice system. Some of us may have family members that have been involved in the justice system, others not. Mm-hmm. So tell us how the local funding, this sales tax, supports juvenile detention versus other funding sources that we might get from the state.
Sure. This funds 100% of our detention facility, and that's our staff. That includes our medical unit, and then of course it's maintenance and operation as well. So 100% of this, our detention center. But we do get other state funding that goes to other programs that are outside of the detention center, and those will go for our probation units. And the state will fund our evidence-based programs for our kids on community service, our BECA bill, kids that are going through the BECA bill, which is our truancy, our at-risk youth, which is filed by the parents, and then our child in need of services, which is filed by the children. And then, of course, we have our court-appointed special advocate program that we get state funding for that supports our volunteers who our staff that support the volunteers that advocate for abused and neglected children in Spokane. So between the state and county funding, we are serving kids from birth to age 18.
So if it's approved by the voters, the tax renewal would last for 10 years. It would bring in approximately $16 million of annual funding. And that goes first to operate the juvenile justice facility, and then any remaining funds then go to operate and pay for staff in our adult detention facilities. So I just wanted to be upfront too that last year's measure was about building new facilities, but this measure, the county commissioners removed the word construction in the ballot title because we do not intend to construct any new facilities with this measure, just to continue to operate the current juvenile detention facility and provide staffing for our adult jails. So, Sheriff, can you speak? I know you and I were involved last year with the other Measure 1 from 2023. Can you explain, speak to the differences and how this tax renewal supports our corrections officers and community safety in a different way?
Well, I think, I think you pointed out some of the key differences. Number one, I think it's important for the taxpayers to know that this is not adding any additional tax burden to them right now. And it is not designed to do that. I think it was very well stated that the voters have been approving this sales tax for the last 20 years almost. I think it's very financially responsible. I think it's very transparent for the commissioners to put a sunset clause on these funds. I would like to think there's going to be a day where we're generating enough revenue from normal tax bases that we wouldn't have to keep taking this sales tax, and I think the commissioners feel the same way. But for now, this is generating $16 million in revenue, frankly, that we can't get anywhere else. And speaking as the sheriff and the chief law enforcement officer of the county, if we lose this $16 million, we can't not operate a juvenile detention facility.
It's a state requirement.
It's a state requirement, and it would really start to undermine the public safety in Spokane County in a way that could really have long-term damaging effects. So it's something for voters to understand that if we don't get the money from the sales tax renewal, it's going to have to come from someplace else. It will likely mean, at the end of the day, fewer police officers on the street, fewer public defenders, fewer prosecutors, because we have to have a place. And Tori, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but anymore, the only people we are holding in our juvenile detention facility are really violent offenders. We are not bringing kids in who are runaways, things like that. This is not the type of offenders that we are putting in our juvenile detention facility.
Correct.
Yeah.
So just to circle back, because thank you, Sheriff, that was really helpful. I believe the $60 million covers operations and maintenance, but also about 140 county staff who work in these facilities. And maybe, Tori, you can say how many work in the juvenile detention facility, and maybe talk about the youth that are entering our facility. A lot of them have experienced trauma in their lives.
Yes.
And
They have.
To the sheriff's point, we do need a place for youth to go if there could be a risk to themselves or others in the community. But I know you have a lot of ways that you do try and not detain youth if possible. So maybe you can talk about the trauma, what you guys do to work with youth in trauma, and what are some of the alternatives to incarceration as well.
We rarely get a kid either into our detention center or just through the court system at all that does not have extensive trauma. And research has shown that negative impact on brain development in the adolescent brain, from emotional regulation to decision making. And so what we have done through the years over our system reform is you can reverse that, and you can reverse that with mentorship. You can reverse that with the right programming. So we don't want to have the kids in detention, and we've done a great job on keeping the kids that really don't need to be there out. And so the ones that we do have in there, like the sheriff said, they're high risk, some serious crimes. But they're still kids, they still have that malleable brain. And so we will work with that as much as we can. And our staff provide a lot of that programming for the kids.
And I wanted to follow up on that because I think people might not know, because you've taught me a lot about the juvenile system and the staff, the detention officers that are paid out of this sales tax that work in the juvenile facility. They work with the youth they do a lot of interaction around life skills. They run group programs. You have other staffing that do other things out you have other funds that do things out in the community.
Correct.
But these detention officers really provide that mentorship that you're talking about.
Yes, they do. We run lean And so we hire corrections officers that want to work with kids, that want to do programming. So they do the life skills, they do social emotional learning, positive youth development, and they're running these programs almost daily. We also do bring in members or agencies from the community for some drug alcohol treatment, for example. We have a partnership with Lutheran Community Services for our kids that may be victimized or at risk of sex trafficking. We have the partnership with the Domestic Violence Consortium, because domestic violence in Spokane is a huge problem. We have some of the highest numbers in the state. So we're trying to intervene with that early. And our staff do a lot of it. This money does fund our facility and the maintenance of that, but it's the staff that provide that long-term community safety. The building itself, yeah, temporary community safety, great way to keep the community safe. When those staff get in there and do that behavior change and work on changing that criminal thinking, that gets us long-term community safety when we send kids back out more positively connected to the community and with a different way of thinking and better emotional regulation and decision making.
And so some people might wonder, when youth are up to 18 are in the detention facility, how do they go to school? What kind of education do they receive when they're there?
You're right. We are required by law to provide education to the kids in the juvenile system. And ESD 101 has done that for years in our facility, and we also have an alternative school off campus. And we have a committed group out of at ESD 101. Some of them have been with us for over 30 years teaching our kids. And they don't do just basic education. They have a culinary class that they do with the kids. They run a really elaborate art program. A lot of these kids are artistic, and so it's a great outlet for them. They do GED prep and GED testing. We have many kids that get a GED that would have never done that outside of detention with the path that they were on. So we take advantage of that captive audience, so to speak, to just drill in as much as we can and give them as much as we can.
Well, when I took a tour of the facility last year, when I was a new county commissioner, I got to see some of the artwork that the youth had. I think they had done a bunch of art in one of the rooms or on the walls. It was just really amazing to give that opportunity to express, you know, when you're going through trauma and you're trying to go through this tough experience of in the criminal justice system, having those outlets. It's really important.
And it's during that time when the kids are drawing or painting that those conversations and that mentorship really happens. So it's they have some great murals down in our facility that the kids have done, and they're proud of that, and they should be.
Well, following up, Sheriff, with what you were talking about earlier, I know, and Tori can weigh in here too on the numbers. Unfortunately, the numbers of juveniles in our county that are charged with offenses has gone up, and we're seeing more, unfortunately, more violent offenses. And so can you speak to kind of what your sheriff deputies are seeing out in the field and how that has changed over your career?
Well, I mean, just the sheer number of serious offenses that juveniles are committing have increased dramatically over the last 10 years. You know, we've seen, you know, for the first time in my career, you know, it spans 26 years now, you know, we've seen a car theft ring run primarily by juveniles who had complete disregard for the safety of the community. And, you know, we currently have, both in the county and in the city, a lot of drive-by shootings, and they are being conducted by what we believe are juvenile gang members. And those are a steep increase in the last year and a half, 2 years. We've seen a lot of gang activity by our youth increase in ways that we didn't really anticipate, and they're more violent maybe than even their predecessors were from back in the 2000s to, you know, 2015. So unfortunately, we've had some changes in the state law on how we can address juvenile offenders or juvenile suspects of crimes that have made it a little more difficult to prosecute. But I think also just, you know, you can never anticipate how an event like COVID could influence youth. and not being in school, not having healthy contact with healthy adults. Because I would like to say all of our youth get to grow up in a home where they weren't traumatized by their parents or family members or neighbors or things like that, but that's just not reality. And a lot of times, the school is a place where the kids get to come and decompress, have a little bit of normalcy. Well, we took that from them for 2 years. And it's hard to say how much even something like that might not be a direct correlation to the violence we're seeing, I don't think it helped it. And again, when we start talking about youth who have been traumatized, that certainly will add to it. And I'm sure a certain number are acting out more violently because of it.
I don't know if Tori, if you want to comment on the trends that you're seeing, and maybe you can also talk about, some of the innovations that Spokane County has made over the years to try and have a lot of, a lot of different ways to address accountability for the youth and restoration, back into the community.
Right. Well, we take a three-pronged approach, and we prioritize community safety, accountability, and rehabilitation. And we try to take a balanced approach there. I've been doing this a long time, 33 years in juvenile court, and I have not seen the behaviors that we're seeing now. And I believe, like the sheriff said, some of that is a result of COVID. We have some angry kids in the community and how they're acting out in our detention center. So we are seeing a lot more violence, no fear of consequences we're seeing. We've had a 25% increase just from 2022 to 2023 in felony referrals, and a 72% increase in the number of youth brought to detention by law enforcement based on what's happening out in the community. So we tried to bend to that, because what we do a risk assessment on every kid. Our kids get assessments all the way through from the minute they come into detention through on probation, and it's a risk and needs assessment. And so then we try to tailor our case management and what we do with the kids based on what those assessments say. And so we have some evidence-based program. We have a lot of family dynamics that are dangerous for kids to be in. And so we have a state-funded evidence-based program called Functional Family Therapy that goes into the home and works with that family as a whole. We have an education and employment training program that gets kids connected to their community school and then provides some help in resume building, some interviewing skills, and then gets them on-site job experience, something that just gives them a little step ahead when they go out to try to get a job. We have a program called Coordination of Services. It's more for our lower risk kids. That is, let us help you help yourself. So we bring in community providers that educate the kids on families on what's available to them, and then have speakers and some drug use education. So we have mental health treatment. We have a big mental health issue with our kids.
Is that funded through our mental health sales tax?
Sales tax it is. We have one position in detention, and then we contract out with community agencies to try to get the kids that care. So we have a diversion program too.
Yeah, one of the innovations that I think Spokane County was one of the first in the state to implement was the electronic home monitoring. So maybe you could speak to that. Is that funded through this juvenile justice sales tax?
It is, and thank you for saying that. Yeah, we probably have between 15 and 20 kids on electronic monitoring at any given time. It's simply more cost effective. And it also benefits the kids in that if we can keep them connected out in the community, they can still go to school, they can go to treatment. Our staff that work in electronic monitoring work with them on weekends and after school, mentoring or taking them to the Y, trying to show them different options they have, different life choices that they have. So we were the first in the state to have electronic monitoring program, and that was back in 1995. And technology has advanced there. They track it, they know where that kid is. They can watch it on the screen exactly where that kid is going. They get 24/7, they're on call, so they can respond immediately. So it's good.
And so you go through an assessment to figure out which kids that would be appropriate for, and it gives them that freedom to still be in their community, following rules of where they can and cannot go, but to stay in the community and not have to be in detention.
Right, and in a controlled environment. where they're
Yes.
not just in the community running around. They are
Yes, there are.
limited to where they
Yes.
can go, and that's a positive thing.
Yes, yes. But they're not in detention. So
Correct.
it's an alternative approach that's appropriate for some youth that can handle that.
Yes.
Well, to follow up on the other pieces of this sales tax measure, I just want to revisit that it's about $16 million a year, that since 1995, it's been renewed 4 times. This would be the 5th renewal. And as you said, Sheriff, I think the commissioners, by putting a 10-year sunset on it, is a responsible thing to do to make sure, because I know we have a lot of new people that have moved to our community in the last 10 years. They may not even know that we have this 1/10 of a cent sales tax that they are paying on certain purchases. And so this is a great opportunity just to let folks know, and having that 10-year renewal cycle allows us to have this conversation and make sure everyone in our community is aware of the requirement that Spokane County provide these detention facilities and what they do and how they do it. So I don't know if you want to follow up on that, but I think it's important. Again, this is a new Measure 1 and it's a renewal, and it gives the voters an opportunity to choose if they want to continue funding these services with that sales tax.
Well, I think one other thing I would add is a lot of times voters aren't aware at how limited county governments are in
Thank
their
you.
ability to
Yes.
generate different sources of revenue. I mean, aside from property tax and sales tax, that's just about it. That's where the bulk of the general fund money comes from. And I don't think any elected official loves to stand in front of a voter and say, I need to either continue to take this money from you or I want to take more money from you. But in the county's case, you are so limited in ways to have income streams come in. And it's not like we are allowed to choose to not provide those services. We're constitutionally mandated to provide them. So I think it's one of those things where this is important. $16 million is a lot of money.
Yes, it is.
Really is a lot of money. And I think Tori has done a fantastic job of articulating just how well spent the money is. I think investing in kids and investing, even outside what's going on in juvenile, investing in what is happening in our detention services matters so much. I firmly believe that if we're investing the money correctly, we're going to save so much money down the road if we're able to get people rehabilitated or changed,
And
for lack of a better term.
literally save lives, because some of these kids, the type of crimes you're talking about, violent crimes, that could result in death, and it has resulted in death. So we can save lives with investing in our youth early, but also in our detention facilities. I had the opportunity to go to an awards ceremony for our detention officers in our adult facilities. And I think some of the juvenile officers were there as well. They're saving lives. Unfortunately, we have folks who are sick and ill and under the use of substances, and I can't tell you how often our detention officers are doing life-saving measures just to keep people alive, so they have that opportunity to, when they get out of our detention facilities, have a second chance. So I just wanted to say I respect our staff who do that work. It's really hard work at the county.
Right, and to hopefully get them into some programming that'll allow them to kind of have a change of heart about how they approach. Can we get them into substance use treatment? Can we get them referred out to mental health treatment? We do a really good job in juvenile, and I'd love to get to the point where we can do similar programming in our adult detention services.
And yes, we need to revisit as our community potentially another criminal justice sales tax that did not pass last year, but we need to revisit that because there's so many things we could do to increase the effectiveness of our adult facilities and to do more and to prevent recidivism in our community. So I wanted to, we just have a few minutes left, but I wanted to follow up on what you were saying, that this is $60 million. It's a huge chunk of it pays for everything in the juvenile detention and is a large chunk of our adult detention budget. So it's hard to talk about that, but as directors for your departments and then, you know, our adult detention facility, there would be an impact to the budget if this sales tax was not renewed. So I think it's important to note that the county would have to pull from other funding of our sheriff's office and other departments.
Parks.
And so it's important the public knows that this has been an integral part of the budget since 1995 to be able to provide, and we've only seen, unfortunately, you know, the offenses have risen in the last 10 years, and we're hoping to change, you know, we can do other things in our community to turn the curve on that, like investing our mental health sales tax money into prevention and substance treatment and other things, which, you know, are great opportunities that we have. But I know we need to finish up here a little bit here, just a couple points on Tori. Where can people learn more and ask questions about the sales tax renewal?
Sure. Well, you can visit the Spokane County website, and the fact sheet is on there and all the information. You can always reach out to me at Juvenile Court through our website as well, or phone directory, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions.
Wonderful. I appreciate how open you are to engaging with the community and getting feedback. And
We're part of the community.
yep, it's very important. Well, Sheriff, thank you for your time. I guess we just to say we can go to the website. There's a video there. There's facts. There's information. And I would tell the audience to reach out to the county. If you have any questions about this sales tax measure, we'd be happy to answer those questions and provide education out to the community. It's a very important topic, and I appreciate you both being here. So, well, it looks like that we're out of time today, but I'd like to remind our audience that this program and videos of all of our Spokane County public meetings can be found on our homepage at SpokaneCounty.org or by visiting our YouTube channel. I'd like to thank my guests, Tori Peterson and Sheriff John Knowles, for sharing your time today and all of your experiences. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Absolutely.
I'm County Commissioner Amber Waldrop. Thank you for joining us today for Spokane County Spotlight.